All right, after day one, now we're on day two, and this is just another day of using the formulas. So hopefully after checking your homework and all that, this makes more sense. Okay, so let's take a look. Remember yesterday we talked about you have a couple of formulas here we're going to be using. The first one being altitude squared equals piece at hypotenuse times piece at hypotenuse. And the second formula would be leg squared equals piece at hypotenuse nearby times the whole hypotenuse. So in this first example, right, we're looking for a lot of different things, okay? So looking at this, right, I look at x. X is the altitude, right? This is a leg. This is a leg. This is a piece at hypotenuse. This is a piece at hypotenuse, right? So right away, I'm going to go and find x first. And x, since it's an altitude, I'm going to say altitude squared equals piece at hypotenuse times piece at hypotenuse. So x squared equals one piece at hypotenuse is 4. The other piece is 5. So x squared equals 20. X would be the square root of 20. And right away here, if you go to do that, you would get 2 root 5. Okay, I can't take that to a decimal, so 2 root 5. Or you could say, right, the square root of 20 is about 4.47. So we'll say 4.5. Now we're going to go and find y. Y is a leg. So we're going to say leg squared is piece at hypotenuse nearby times the whole hypotenuse. Okay? So leg squared, so right away I'm going to say leg is y. So y squared equals piece at hypotenuse nearby y is 4 times what I have to do here is add these together, 5 plus 4. The whole hypotenuse is 9, so times 9. So y squared equals 36. Take the square root. Y equals 6. Now z is the other leg. So I'm going to use the same formula here. Leg squared equals piece at hypotenuse nearby times the whole hypotenuse. So right away, z squared equals piece at hypotenuse nearby is 5 times the whole hypotenuse we said is 9. So z equals the square root of 45. Now that you can see is 9 and 5, so 3 root 5. So we could say 3 root 5, or the decimal value would be around 6.7. Okay, so we're actually starting off with one of the more challenging problems in the notes, right? But it's getting you to see that to find this leg, we use these pieces. To find this leg, we use these pieces. And to find the altitude, we use these two pieces. Okay? Now the next one, right? Here's the thing. This is the altitude. This is a piece at hypotenuse. This is a piece at a hypotenuse. To find x, right now I only have one piece at hypotenuse. But if they give me the entire hypotenuse, I can use that in this piece at hypotenuse to find the other piece. This piece is going to be 9 minus 3, which is 6. Now, since x is the altitude, I can say altitude squared equals piece at hypotenuse times piece at hypotenuse. So x squared equals 6 times 3. So that would be the square root of 18, which we could break up into the square root of 9 and the square root of 2. So 3 root 2, or if you went ahead and found the decimal value, you would get about 4.2. Now, if you went to find y, remember, when I look for y, that's a leg, so I'm going to use the piece at hypotenuse nearby it and the entire hypotenuse. So now I'm using leg squared equals piece at hypotenuse nearby times the whole hypotenuse. So y squared equals 6 times 9, which would give me the square root of 54. Now, right away, 9 is a perfect square, so that would be 3 root 6. And if I went and found the decimal value of that, square root of 54 is about 7.3. Okay? Now, here's where it gets a little more complicated, right? In order to find y, I need this piece of the hypotenuse, and right now I can't find it. Okay? So what can I do here? Well, if I think about it, I could basically say if the whole hypotenuse was x and this piece of the hypotenuse was 9, this would be whatever x is minus 9. It'd be this whole hypotenuse minus 9. So now if I want, I could actually create an equation that has x in it. So I'm going to use leg squared equals piece of the hypotenuse nearby times the whole hypotenuse to find x. So 6 squared equals piece of the hypotenuse nearby would be x minus 9 times the whole hypotenuse is x. Now, you're going to love it when I do this. When I distribute the x, I get x times x is x squared minus 9 times x is 9x equals 6 squared, 36. Yes, I hate to say it. We're going to have to solve a quadratic. So, first thing I do, set it equal to 0. X squared minus 9x minus 36 equals 0. Now, before I even move on, I'm going to see if this is factorable. Are there any numbers that multiply to give me negative 36 and add up to negative 9? And the answer to that is negative 12 and positive 3. So I'm going to factor that out to be x minus 12 times x plus 3. Now, when I set these each equal to 0 to finish the solving part out, this would give me 12. This would give me negative 3. So right away, I know a segment cannot be negative. So that one doesn't make sense. So x is 12. So right now that tells me my hypotenuse is 12. This piece here would be 12 minus 9, which is now 3. So now I can go and find y using altitude squared equals piece of the hypotenuse times piece of the hypotenuse. So y squared equals 3 times 9. That would give me the square root of 27. And right away, when I take the square root, that would give me 3 root 3. So x is 12, y is 3 root 3, or if I find the decimal version of that, right, the square root of 27 would give me 5.2. Okay? Next example. Ooh, good one. Right? So when I look here, I'm looking for x and y, which is basically both pieces of the hypotenuse. I don't have the altitude. The only thing I know is each leg. I don't even know the hypotenuse. So what can I do? Well, if I look at this original right triangle, can I use Pythagorean theorem to find the length of this entire hypotenuse? Well, 15 squared plus 20 squared equals the hypotenuse squared. I'm going to use Pythagorean theorem. And when I solve this, 15 squared plus 20 squared, right? 15 squared plus 20 squared gives you 625. So h is equal to the square root of 625, which ends up being 25. Now, the nice part is, I can now use the leg squared formula to find x. Leg squared equals piece of the hypotenuse nearby times the whole hypotenuse. So, 15 squared equals piece of the hypotenuse nearby is x times the whole hypotenuse is 25. So, 225 equals 25x. X is equal to 225 divided by 25 gives you 9. So right away I know x is 9. Now I could do the same thing using the other leg to find y, but why work that hard? If the whole hypotenuse is 25 and x is 9, isn't y just going to be 25 minus 9, which would give you 16? Okay. Number 5, looking for x. I'm given the leg and 2 pieces of the hypotenuse. So right away I know leg squared is equal to piece of the hypotenuse nearby times the whole hypotenuse. Well, the leg is x plus 2 all squared equals piece of the hypotenuse nearby it is x times the whole hypotenuse. You have to remember, you have to add these together. Now, something nice works out here. The tough part here is squaring this. When I square x plus 2, I have to write it out, and then I'm going to FOIL it. X times x, x squared. X times 2, 2x. 2 times x, 2x. 2 times 2 is 4. I would get x squared plus 4x plus 4 when I square that. So this now becomes x squared plus 4x plus 4 equals x squared plus 5x. Now, the nice part about this is I do see x squared, so I have a quadratic. But when I go to set it equal to 0, the x squareds actually both eliminate. And I end up with 4x plus 4 equals 5x. And now, when I subtract 4x, I get x equals 4. And I am done. All right. Now, example 6. Right away, I'm given altitude in the pieces of the hypotenuse. So, altitude squared equals piece of the hypotenuse times piece of the hypotenuse. 8x equals 16. X is equal to 2. So we actually work from hard to harder to harder to harder and end easy. Remember, don't make these harder than they need to be. Use the 2 formulas, know what you have, fill it in. All right.